Next up, Dan David, a man who has been active in exposing fraud undertaken by the Chinese, part of a film called The China Hustle, in which he is a lead protagonist, focuses on this. His company, Geo Investing, has itself uncovered some $15 billion worth of such malpractice. And he bills himself and is most welcome here as a champion of free speech, which we are very pleased to be able to exercise on this occasion with his help. Dan, welcome.
So thank you all for having me here. And I find myself saying the same thing I've said for the last 10 years. I have no idea how I got here. It's a crazy story. I am an average person, incredibly average, from an average place, Flint, Michigan, raised with a great working family. And I came across the most wild and crazy story of fraud that you could make up. And so I'm going to tell you this story and tell you who I am, because who I am is who you are. And who I am is nobody, everybody, and you. And it starts in 2008. Some of you may have heard that was a choppy year for the financial markets. Going into November, we were a little crestfallen. And we looked for the greatest opportunity in investing, for the greatest value in investing, and we saw China in 2009. And we went all in. And man, we're talking 80-90% of everything we had was invested in China. And we picked up 229% in 2009. We were rock stars. We knew what we were doing. And then in 2010, some of these evil short sellers started to say some of the companies that we had invested in and exited because it hit a price target that we were comfortable with were frauds. And my partner and I decided right away that A, they were wrong, but we needed to prove they were wrong. Because if they weren't, then we just got lucky. And 2008 was going to happen to us all over again. So we hired researchers to go on the ground in China. And we investigated 30 companies. And our researchers came back and said the short sellers are wrong. They're understating the problem. Fraud is out in the open. These factories are Potemkin villages. They will bring an investment bank road tour, buses of people will show up, get off, and see a running, robust factory. They get on the bus, they leave, the next day, factory shuts down. They're all temporary workers. For any of you that have seen the China Hustle, you saw that once we saw this happen, we put up time-lapse surveillance camera and caught this in action over and over again. So nobody from Flint, Michigan had 12 companies delisted from our exchanges and exposed $15 billion in fraud. And that's what all of you can do once you set your mind to it, once you see where it's at. And I will tell you right away that when our researchers came back and said that fraud is out in the open, our first inclination wasn't to be short. I went to the exchanges and I said, this is what's happening. They said, get out of here. Who are you? I went to the investment banks. I said, you should hire us to do your due diligence because we're obviously better at it than you are. And you're taking 10% transaction fees representing frauds. They said, you want us to pay you not to collect fees? Because if you come back and tell us they're a fraud, we can't collect the fee. Get out of here. We're going to sue you. After being told this enough times, we left. We published our reports, and we started crashing billion-dollar companies. And the investment banks kept their promise. They sued us. Of course. And again, I don't know how I got here, but it starts with a $247 million lawsuit. Now, I don't care how tough you think you are and what you think you've done when you've crashed a billion-dollar company. when a $247 million lawsuit lands on your desk, you get a lump in your throat. It's tough. Thank God it was that much money. If it would have been $10 million, I had to think about it. But for $247 million, I dug my feet in. And we fought and we won. Why? Because we have something, I have something, as a low-born, average citizen that you don't have in China. Freedom of speech. And we stick it to them with the freedom of speech. We go at them with the freedom of speech. That's right. They can't do it, we can do it. I was the first short seller, I guess that's what I am now, own it, to go to Hong Kong and deliver a short report on stage at the Sohn conference. Yes, I had my plane ticket in my pocket and left 2 hours after the presentation. Because I'll tell you, to Kyle's point, it is not one country, two systems anymore. I've been there over the last 4 years, and now I'm telling you, at most, it is one country, 1.5 systems, and I believe it is one country. I had dinner with a Hong Kong regulator the night after my second speech, and I said, look, you know the company I presented on is a fraud. They're 300 miles away from here right now. You can go see what I said and what I showed you on my presentation. He said, no, I can't. So when China wants something from Hong Kong, they remind us we're one country. When Hong Kong wants something on a China-based company, they remind us we're two systems. And that's how it works with them now. But you have to understand, we have to call out the truth. I went to Congress, and I spoke to Congress, 15 of our representatives in Congress and in the Senate. And I came home, my wife asked me, what did you learn? That many of our members of Congress are really dumb. And that is funny because it is so true. I, as a citizen, go down there and say, look, here's a fact. It's not illegal in China to steal from an American citizen. To this day. And our members of Congress are like, what? Oh, okay, I'm telling you this. You're in Congress and you don't know. No, they don't know. They didn't know. And then they started asking me, what should we do about it? I said, I should go to my congressman. That's what I'm doing right now. You're asking me what we should do about it. So the next year, I went down there with a plan. Okay, they want to know, what should we do about it? I said, nuclear option, delist them all. Of course, we can't do that. How about, if you're going to call the market a buyer beware environment, it says on a pack of cigarettes, if you smoke these enough, they'll kill you. How about you put a little asterisk next to the ticker symbol of these companies? You can pull it down and say, hey, by the way, if this executive steals all the assets of this company, which they've done hundreds of times now, to the tune of over $100 billion, they're not prosecutable. Just make investors aware. They're not prosecutable if they steal all your money. No, couldn't get that done either. Why? Because China is buying our freedom of speech. We cannot control their media or have an influence in their narrative, in their media. They can control and have an influence in a narrative in our media, which is when you speak pejoratively about a China-based company, it's almost tacit racism. When you say that I'm protecting my country against a China-based country, then, again, what do you have against China? I don't have anything against China. I have something against companies that lie, cheat, and steal. And I point this out to all of us here. A Chinese chicken farmer doesn't wake up one day and know how to defraud the U.S. capital markets. They are taught how to do it by us. Our banks, our institutions. So my problem isn't with China or the Chinese. It is with American institutions, American banks, Chinese institutions, Chinese banks that are committing fraud. That's not a people problem, that's an institutional problem. and nobody goes to jail for it. Not one has ever gone to jail for it. And they need to do that. And China understands. Here's the culture difference. It's not in the math. Math is science. The problem is accounting is an art form. And they have some Jackson Pollocks over there. So the culture difference that we do have is that when China is attacked, they see themselves in circular units. Their family is the tightest circle. Their village is an outer circle. Their province is an outer circle of pride. And then their country. They don't have a whistleblower program in China. A whistleblower program is like, you'll hear the whistle blowing as the bullet goes through your head. They don't tell on each other. So they have that circular, tight-knit group. When they circle their wagons, they're tough. The United States used to be that way. But now, when we circle our wagons, we're here, they're there, they throw a bag of the money in the middle, our wagons break. So I'm an average citizen saying that we can all do more. We've exposed $15 billion. We'll continue to do that. We are actively telling the truth every day through freedom of speech. And I would ask you to join me in doing the same and to never be afraid to say you're proud to be an American and you're proud to protect your country. Thank you very much.